Substances aren't usually the problem. What we think is the core issue. It's almost always rooted in feeling fundamentally mismatched with life itself. You see people out there who look perfect on the surface, successful careers, great lives, but inside, they're running on fumes because they feel permanently separated from everything real. That disconnect creates massive pressure, especially when you live in a world saturated with curated highlight reels online, feeding those toxic comparisons until inadequacy feels like a permanent resident. I want to talk about why traditional narratives around healing miss this mark. If you grew up in a stable home, having love and support, doesn't that mean you shouldn't need anything stronger than water to cope? Wrong. Sometimes the very thing intended to protect user families trying to help ends up reinforcing the narrative that something is inherently broken inside us. And then comes the coping mechanism, whether it's alcohol or another crutch. Initially, it promises quiet. It silences the screaming anxiety that whispers, "You are never good enough." But that temporary silence inevitably leads to escalation because the original wound wasn't fixed, it was just muffled. For so many of us, fitting in became a performance. We adopt entire personalities, elaborate facades powered by whatever chemical buffer we have available, all to meet impossible societal standards. I wish someone had ever stopped the noise and said, clearly, it is okay to just be exactly who you are. Because chasing approval forces you onto paths of extremes, whether it's manic achievement or total collapse. Even in recovery, that drive for perfection lingered. Trying to micromanage every aspect of your existence, transforming hobbies into obsessive regimens, eventually burns you out. You realize you've replaced one form of bondage with another. But here is the pivot point. True breakthrough rarely happens neatly scheduled. Often it's catalyzed by absolute catastrophe, what some call the gift of desperation. Hitting rock bottom isn't failure sometimes, it's the universe forcing you off autopilot. Once you reach that edge, survival kicks in. And what sustains you through that terrifying climb back? Not necessarily flawless willpower, but radical honesty discovered in shared vulnerability. Sitting across from someone who understands the exact texture of your private pain, that peer recognition trumps any sterile diagnostic label. It gives you permission to stop performing and finally inhabit yourself. Self-discovery isn't about adding more things to your plate, more courses, more aesthetics, more achievements. It's about subtraction. It's about cultivating stillness. Before diving into complex meditations, try this: slow down your routine until you become an observer of your own day. Watch your thoughts arrive and pass. Don't engage in the debate. Use the page, not the screen. Putting ink to paper bypasses our brain's tendency to polish reality, allowing raw truth to spill out unfiltered. And let's address the obsession with looking better. Society pushes this relentlessly. You get drawn into tweaking, optimizing, enhancing. But you have to ask, is this addressing a genuine functional deficit, or is it just patching up the symptom of that foundational mismatch? My takeaway has been realizing that caring for the self, the actual biology, the gut health, the way your nerves respond, is infinitely more important than perfecting the packaging. Honoring your body's signals, even the uncomfortable ones, stops treating it like a machine needing upgrades, and starts treating it like a living ecosystem that deserves respect. Ultimately, freedom moves away from endlessly scrutinizing your flaws and shifts toward contributing outwards. Focusing entirely inward breeds isolation, pouring your energy into supporting others, into building something meaningful outside of your fragile ego, generates a different kind of bedrock confidence. Stop waiting for the grand epiphany. Find small pockets of present awareness today. A conscious walk, 5 minutes of silent observation. Writing down 3 things that actually happened versus 3 things you expected. Those tiny acts of grounding are the first steps back to inhabiting your own authentic rhythm. Check out Profile for podcast summaries.